It was like right after, was it Western Illinois? Was that
Yeah.
was Western Illinois the first one? Yeah. So that was, oh my gosh.
All right,
Yeah.
quiet on the set.
Let's go.
Okay, guys, live in 5, 4, 3, 2.
What's going on? Happy Friday, Hoosier Nation. It is Sam Niederman here with my friend Brandon Schaff, and welcome to the first ever episode of the Zoom Room. We are hanging out virtually today to talk all things IU athletics down memory lane. We're going to be starting this show as a part of our B430 IU Sports Media course led by our fearless leader, Galen Clavio, who is our producer today. Brandon and I in the host chairs, we're going to get so many great guests on today to take a little bit of a look back and hang out and tell some stories about IU athletics over the last 3, 4, 5 years or so. Brandon, my friend, it's great to see you. How are you?
Sam, great to see you too, reporting from Chicago, Illinois over here. So I'm an hour but ahead of you, I guess, and we're or behind you. And we're, just enjoying it. We're all sheltered up in home, following the rules here, and it looks like you are too. So it's good to get this going. It's a little bit of it's kind of a semblance of normalcy again, being back in the host position here. We haven't really been able to do too much video stuff since this all started. So I'm ready to rock and roll.
Let's do it, man. Brandon's in Chicago. I am in Fishers. Today we got a great lineup of all IU student media guests to talk about some of their favorite memories, either covering as media members or just witnessing as students in their time here at IU. We're going to start off with Austin Render in just a few moments to talk IU football at Nebraska. We got Bendu Yaney and Dylan Wallace coming on to talk about IU women's basketball in a 4 overtime game in the Big Ten tournament a couple of years ago. Later on, Maya Ingles going to join us, talk a little IU soccer. We got a stacked lineup, man. But we got to start first to kind of set the tone. What is your favorite memory here at IU athletics-wise that you've seen, you've covered, anything that you've had the front row seat for?
Yeah, Sam, we have the advantage of 4 years. Well, at least I do 4 years under my belt at IU. You came from Alabama, but you still have some experience, with all these events too. And for me, my freshman year, and we're going to talk about this later on a little more in depth, but the IU-UNC basketball game is one that I'll probably remember for the rest of my life. It was one of the first games that I had ever been to at Assembly Hall. And get this. So the beginning, the national anthem was sung by Jim Corneliuson, who sings for the Blackhawks. And he is like the best. Yes, Indy 500. And then Kyle Schwarber, who had just won the World Series with the Cubs, came out and was there for the anthem too, and they introduced him and everything. And it was one of the most special moments ever. And the game was great. We'll get more into the actual game itself later, but man, what a special moment. What about you, my friend?
That's a good one to start off. I tell you what, if you're a freshman and you see that, you're thinking good days ahead for the basketball.
I was thinking national championship all 4 years, Sam. I couldn't believe my eyes.
Yeah, a big plot twist, unfortunately. For me, I'm going to go back to last October, IU men's soccer against Maryland. It was one of my favorite games I've ever done at IU. Called it on the radio with a young Jack Ankeny. And that match was back and forth. It was one of the best games I've ever seen, just in sports, period. It was really well technically played. Andrew Gutman ended up winning the game. He had a goal in the 90th minute and extra time to seal it for IU 2-1. He had a spectacular effort for the first goal, which was just complete solo, coast to coast, just what he had been doing all year long. Maryland was able to equalize. They had a response later on in about the 60th minute. And just a great game, back and forth, great pace. Maryland was kind of in a tough spot at the time. They started out with a really tough schedule and didn't really score, but they were really organized at the back and played within their means. So that was a fun game, seeing Andrew Gutman with his star power. And of course, it was the first of 3 games that we saw between the two teams. And IU won the first 2 regular season Big Ten championship semis. Of course, lost in the College Cup, though, the
Yeah.
one that mattered the most. But that was an awesome game for sure.
Oh yeah, that season was just unbelievable. I remember being like, okay, well, if we don't have basketball working for us, at least we got soccer going on right now, and that was special. And I loved seeing all of those guys. My favorite IU player was always Griffin Dorsey. I was always just rooting him
Great
on the
ball
whole
player.
time. He was amazing, and now he's playing, in the MLS. And Gutman is playing over in Europe, isn't he?
Yeah, he was with I want to say, was it Celtic?
Celtic FC.
Yeah,
I think.
and yeah, and he's come back on campus a few times. So one of many great
Yes.
IU soccer players that have gone out of the pro ranks. Well, I tell you what, my friend, let's get into this good guest lineup. We're gonna hear from Dylan Wallace and Ben Duyaney for IU women's hoops later on. Jack Grossman's gonna stop by. Maya Engel, Michael Tilka, the great Jordan Gould's gonna swing by as well.
What a
But
lineup.
first, we start out with the Hoosier Network's own WIUX broadcaster. Here he is, the pride of Fort Wayne. It's Austin Render to talk a little Indiana football. Austin, what is going on, my friend? Great to see you.
What's up, guys? Thanks for including me in the inaugural Zoom room. I am in my Zoom room right now in the good old Fort Fun. I'm excited to go down memory lane a little bit here. That's always something I enjoy doing, and you guys are giving us a great opportunity to do that today.
Definitely. Well, that's Galen who's really responsible for making this happen. But the Zoom room, we're happy to have you as the first guest. We're here to talk a little IU football. I understand that you have had the opportunity to broadcast some of those games, and you've really been around the program a lot. So, just talk about, one of your favorite events, really in IU sports history.
Yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to broadcast a lot of great sporting events here at IU. And when Sam asked me, hey, pick one, I was like, I don't know if I can pick one, but I went with the Nebraska IU football game from this past year. I was fortunate enough to go to Lincoln. That's an atmosphere I won't forget. It is loud, let me tell you. They do not skimp on the volume there at Memorial Stadium in Lincoln. And there's so many people there. It was a blackout. And Indiana came out and played really well. I mean, you could arguably say that was Peyton Ramsey's best game as a Hoosier. 351 yards, couple of touchdowns, had one on the ground as well. And of course, in typical Indiana football fashion, they tried to give it away down the stretch with a third-string quarterback in for Nebraska, but they found a way to win. And that's not normally something Indiana football did at any point in time. I've been watching Indiana football for 20 years now, 21 years. And I mean, getting to be on the call of the game where they get to go bowling so early in the season, it was like such a momentous win. And you could see it in Tom Allen. You could see it in the players. I bet you could hear it in my voice. I mean, it was just a day that I won't forget because and that team was 6-2 after that game. That never happens in IU football. And that was just a special day for me to get to go on the road to watch this incredible football game that was well played between both teams. And seeing Indiana become bowl eligible so early was just an absolute blast.
Yeah, that was their third straight win at the time, Austin. And it was close in the fourth quarter, high scoring, 30-point game. Were you ever concerned during it that, oh boy, we're going to get deja vu all over again, but then they get the monkey off their back?
Honestly, so they were trailing at halftime. At halftime, Nebraska was up 21-16, and I honestly was not concerned because Nebraska was playing Christian McCaffrey's brother as their third string quarterback, and he had a great game. He's an athletic specimen, obviously, from the McCaffrey family. But if you got your third string quarterback in, and I know Peyton Ramsey's technically the backup, but he's we all know he's better than a normal backup. I felt like the water was going to level out eventually, and the better quarterback was going to win the game. And Ramsey had a great second half. Watt Fillier had 150 yards. Those two kind of created that. This was where we really saw it was the Michigan State game. Then you saw Rutgers, and then on the road in Nebraska, you're like, all right, Watt Fillier's actually here to stay. He's a weapon, and he and Ramsey were creating something. And I know I never thought this is going to end up poorly. Maybe a little bit in the fourth quarter, but I mean, you have that gut feeling when you've been watching IU for so long. You're like, oh, when's it going to come? When's the collapse going to come? Or how is it going to happen this time? And it just never did. And that's what was so impressive about that game.
Austin, what
Now,
was
I understand too that there was a big road trip that happened out to Lincoln. Just the entire
Ooh.
Lincoln weekend experience, Memorial Stadium, tailgating was pretty cool. What was your entire experience with that in terms of just going on a fun trip?
Well, Lincoln is a place that every football fan should go. Let's just put it at that. I mean, that is a football city, and I know they have great crowds at the Vault for basketball games too. But that is a football city in Lincoln. Now, I did not get to go on the road trip, so to say. Connor Hines and I flew, so we didn't get to do all the barbecue and great stuff with Galen Clavio, but we did get to go out for a nice meal after the game on Saturday. It was an early morning flight. I think we flew out at like 6 a.m. the next day, so it was a quick turnaround. But the city, I mean, we're driving in our Uber on the way to the game, and it's just tailgating miles and miles and miles away from the stadium. And everywhere you look, there's people in Nebraska red and white partying and getting ready. And the difference is they'll party, but then they make their way into the game, and 90,000 strong are in there at Memorial Stadium. And it is an atmosphere that every big football fan should experience.
Yeah, and you think that Indiana, has the tailgating scene down in Bloomington. Just wait till you make it out to Lincoln there. And
Exactly.
I know you work with HN, and so does Griffin Gonzalez, and he was out there doing a video. He found one of those corn hats. You know what I'm talking about? These little
Yep.
stick out there. Did you find one of those?
No, I didn't. I got to share the one with Griffin for a little bit before he misplaced it. But
Oh, you didn't even bring it back.
it was a very unfortunate scenario. But he had a
Can't
great time
misplace
with it.
that.
I tell you, you got to put that thing in a case and never
a relic,
forget where it is. I mean, he had a blast with the tailgate talk that he did. He got to really immerse himself in the Nebraska football culture, and they just bleed football. But it's different because he talked to a lot of people who, I mean, that's what you do. There's not a whole lot else to do in Lincoln, Nebraska in the fall. You go to football games, and it's just a different environment than even here in Bloomington, where in Bloomington we have great tailgates. People come out and they show out for the tailgate part of it, but the football aspect of things is a whole nother level.
What was it about this year's team, IU's team, that really seemed different than the past few years? Because it really seemed like they just were ready to go from the beginning. And, the past few years, it's been like that. But you really saw something special this year. I don't know if maybe just different personnel, maybe Tom Allen really just fired him up. But what was it for you observing everything? Was there something different?
To me, it's the balance of offense and defense that this team hasn't had in years. You think back to the good Kevin Wilson teams, and by good, I mean 6 wins. It was offensive firepower, and hopefully you outscore the other team because we don't have a defense. And then when Tom Allen comes in, his first couple of years, it was that Tom Allen vaunted defense, but they just couldn't quite score. And a little bit of Nate Sudfeld's final year, which was Tom Allen's first year as defensive coordinator, when he kind of bursted on the scene with Tigray Scales and that great defense, and Sudfeld had a great offense. And that team probably should have won more than 6 games. But we hadn't seen that from an Indiana team where there's the balance offensively, where Ramsey and Penix could both go out there and put up points. And the defense struggled at times, but statistically, it was a good defense. You have guys like Taiwan Mullen, who's out there making great plays, James Miller and some of those linebackers, Raekwon Jones in the middle. There was just a balance, and you knew this team could score if they needed to score. And you had a little bit of confidence that they could make a defensive stop if they needed that. That was the difference to me.
Yeah. By the way, 2 Easter eggs. The 2 football players, Nathan Vedral, who started at quarterback in that game, and Brant Banks ended up playing for the Nebraska basketball.
It all comes around, Sam. It all comes around.
Full circle. First win for IU at Memorial Stadium in Lincoln since 1959. Austin Render was there to call it. My friend, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Enjoy the rest of the inaugural Zoom room.
You got it. Zooming in.
It. That's
Thanks,
awesome, Brandon.
Austin.
How about that, Brandon? That was
What a
that was a huge landmark win. This Indiana
perfect start.
football program in a better spot because of it.
Yeah, I absolutely love what I saw from this season, and it's so special that Austin got to be a part of that. The second bowl game in 4 years. Indiana unable to get those wins in the actual bowl game, but just being there really is special. And to have 6 wins that early in the season, it had been over a decade since we'd seen a team for the Cream and Crimson on the football field really show out in that kind of way. And it's special.
Awesome. All right, let's bring it over to the hardwood. Indiana women's basketball had one of their best years ever, a banner year in 2018. Amanda Cahill and Tyra Buss were the dynamic duo in that one, and they played in a game to remember in the Big Ten tournament against Michigan State. It went to 4 overtimes, and we are fortunate enough to have Dylan Wallace, who was at that game, covering it here, along with IU women's basketball player Bendu Yaney, who is also joining us, and she was playing in that game as a freshman. So we're going to have a little quad box style of 4 different voices here to go back on that one. Dylan, Bendu, thanks so much for taking the time, and welcome to the Zoom room.
Oh,
There she
thanks for
is.
having me.
What's up, Bendu? How are you doing?
Good. How are you? I'm all
Very-
the way from Portland right now. 3
Ooh.
hours ahead, or 3 hours behind.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
Yeah,
early morning for her.
early rise.
Yeah, no, it's really
So it is
early.
8:45 then.
Yes.
That's rough.
my goodness.
I was
Yeah.
complaining about waking up at 9 Central Time. That would have been
Yeah.
oh my gosh, 7 a.m. over there. No way.
Come on, Brandon. You got
Yeah, no, I was up early this morning, but it's all right.
That's
I'm used to
ridiculous.
it.
You
Yeah.
got it. So Bendu and Dylan are on the line here. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. Bendu, we'll start with you. That was a wild game. Your freshman year with the ball club at IU. What was going through your guys' mind in a big game that you guys had to win to keep your NCAA standing alive, and then 4 overtimes down the pipe before eventually winning it?
Man, honestly, it felt like a never-ending game. Like, we all were sitting there at one point and we're like, is this game going to end? Like, and when we got to the 4th overtime, it was like, okay, no, this might not end tonight. Like, we might go into the morning because, like, it kept, like, tying. It kept tying. But, eventually we won the game. And in the locker room, everybody was so tired. It was kind of like we wanted to celebrate, but everybody just wanted to sit down at the same time.
What, Ben, how do you stay motivated in that? Like, obviously, you're completely fatigued by the time you get to even the 2nd overtime. So, but the quadruple overtime, at that point, it's like you're playing 2, almost 3, it feels like 2 full games. So, what was Terry Morin saying? What were you guys doing to just keep yourself loose getting that late in the game then?
I mean, honestly, she was just saying, keep going. We practice like this in the summer. We do a lot of running in the summer, so our stamina is up during that time. So we're able to play 2 games, kind of, because that's what essentially it was. But at the same time, she was just like, you guys got to keep fighting because we know we can win this game if you guys keep fighting. So that's really what it was all about. It was just about fighting because at that point, it was like whoever, like it was score, and then you had to like get a stop, and then score, get a stop. It wasn't even like we weren't even really running offense at that time because it's like we ran all our plays, and now it's like we got to just play basketball.
Now it's all impromptu.
Exactly.
Almost like a pickup game then at that point.
Yep, exactly.
Got it. Let's swing it over to Dylan. Dylan, you were there. What was your experience with that game?
How many times, every now and then we get our typical overtime game. How many times do you see double overtime or even triple? But like to have a quadruple overtime game and to witness it and be a part of it, it was crazy. And we had, I had covered the team for the Indiana Daily Student, so IU student newspaper that season. And, we had watched this team. They had won 8 of their last 9 games after kind of starting out slow in Big Ten play. So they were making a run. And as Sam mentioned earlier, they kind of needed this game to get to the NCAA tournament to keep those hopes alive. And, we're watching it, and, when it goes, it just keeps going, it keeps getting tied. And it was just so crazy, and the emotion in that game. I remember talking to Tyra Buss, Amanda, even Bendu after the game in the locker room. They were just like, they all admitted it was kind of like the craziest up and down emotional game they've been a part of. I want to point to one key moment. It was at the end of the first overtime. It looked like the game was over because so Michigan State's Shea Cooley, she hit a shot at the buzzer to what it looked like win the game. But what happened was the clock inadvertently stopped running with 2.5 seconds to go.
Mm.
So so she had more time to get the shot off because the clock accidentally stopped. So the Michigan State fans, the Michigan State team think they've won the game, but they really hadn't. So we go to like a 3-minute review. It's high drama, high stakes for both teams, and they end up overturning it because the clock stopped, and it would have run out before she got the shot off. So then a double overtime happens. Amanda Cahill hits a shot at the buzzer at the end of the double overtime to force a third. Ben Duyaney over here, she hits a shot with 18 seconds left in the third overtime to tie it, and we go to a fourth. And then Tyra Buss, who was kind of struggling from the field a little bit throughout the game, she hits a three-pointer with about 40 seconds left to go up by 2. Michigan State ties, but then Cahill, who had 38 points on the night, career high, she sealed the game with the free throw line with 2 free throws. Final score 111-109. Longest game in the Big Ten tournament, women's Big Ten tournament history. It was just crazy. It was absolutely incredible to be a part of. It's a game I'll never forget being able to cover. And another thing with this team is they didn't have a lot of depth that season. So they're basically going with a 7-man rotation. So the bench, they accumulated just 19 minutes for that 60-minute game. Bendu played 56 minutes. It's only supposed to be a 40-minute game. Tyra and Amanda each both played 60 minutes. Jalen Penn played 59 minutes. It was crazy. Kim Royster was she played the least amount of starters and still played over 40 minutes. She played 43. So just the resilience of that team. It kind of really summed up what we had seen from them that whole season. As I mentioned, winning 8 out of their last 9 games to really fight back and almost get into that tournament. And it just summed up the resilience that they showed all season to be able to pull through in that game and take the win. It was incredible to watch.
Yeah. And, Dylan, you got to experience it in a really unique way, because there's really only 3 ways. Either you're playing the game, you're spectating, or you're reporting on it. And for you to be able to report on a season like that, that went all the way, how special was it to be able to cover all that? How was that different than, any other beat that you've had to be able to cover a team that now has a banner up in Assembly Hall?
Right. It's really cool to kind of, every time I go back to Assembly Hall, I can look up and see that banner and be like, hey, I covered that team. I was able to write about all the articles, that happened throughout that season. And it was a season that meant so much too. Tyra Buss and Anna Cahill were both seniors. It was kind of their last hurrah at Indiana, 2 players that meant so much to the program. So to be able to show the fight they did that season, to be able to end it on a win and a WNIT title was really cool. And with that 4OT game, it was incredible. Deadlines were just throughout the window for that game. We had deadlines for the paper, but at that point, once maybe the third overtime starts, we're like, hey, listen, we're not going to get this in on time because this game is not ending right now. So
how was writing that game? Were you were under pressure at all, or at that point you're just enjoying it?
At that point, I was just enjoying it. I tried to, I took my time. I tried to make it the best I could make it. It's still one of my favorite, recaps that I've ever written, just because of the drama that happened. As I mentioned, that buzzer beater that we thought was a win, trying to capture that scene, what was going through the players' heads when they potentially could have lost, and it's up to review. Just high drama. It was awesome. It was still one of my favorite gamers because it was one of my favorite games. So it was really, really incredible.
Way to be, my man. Bendu, you got to play on a special Indiana team that year with Amanda and Tyra. What was it like to be with them as seniors so they could set an example for a younger player like you and the rest of your teammates before the rest of your IU career?
It was incredible, honestly, learning a lot from them, especially with Tyra, because me and her play kind of the same position-ish, like a guard, and learning from her and just learning her work ethic and like just seeing how hard she works. That set a tone for how I want to work and how I want people to remember me by. And so like it was really a good experience. I wouldn't like change it for the world. Like having them 2 as my leaders for my first year was truly amazing. It made me a person made me the basketball player I am today.
Yeah, and it really led to, what this team became this year. You were able to be a part of another team that really started to look like they had some potential. Obviously, things, didn't really, continue in the way that they could have because of all the NCAA athletic events being canceled. But, just all of that transitioning into how you are as a player now, what is it like now being in that position that Tyra Buss was in before to kind of pass on the torch?
It's kind of weird because now like all the underclassmen are looking up at me because I'm an upperclassman. But you know, it's fun because now it's like you see the game in a different area or a different way because you've been there for 2 years, and so I'm able to tell people or tell like the freshmen what's going to happen before it kind of happens, and they're kind of like, oh shoot, like you got like superpowers. And I'm like, no, he's just like when you've
Just
been
experience.
once you've been in the game for so long and you like watch from like the older people, like you understand like how things are going to be played and how things are. So it's kind of nice to be able to like give back to like the freshmen because then they learn faster and it's like an easier process for us to basically win bigger games and like things like that in like close situations. So they already know how things are going to work in that situation.
Excellent stuff, Bendu. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. That's Dylan Wallace, formerly of the IDS, and Bendu Yaney, former IU women's basketball player. Hey, Bendu, get some sleep back there in Oregon, all right? It's too early.
I will. I'm going to sleep right after this.
You got it.
Thanks
Guys,
for joining us,
thank you. Have a
Bendu.
great
Thanks,
rest of your
Dylan.
day.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Have a great one,
Alrighty.
guys.
Well, there you go. A little IU women's basketball against Michigan State in 2018. That's actually the longest standing game ever played at Bankers Life Fieldhouse since it was originally opened up in 1999. How about that? Still standing. Over the last couple of years, I'm wondering if anything will ever beat it. Never know, though.
Seriously. And man, another special season, all of these moments really coming from just monumental seasons in IU history. And just to be here at a time when all of this is going on, for them to go on and take on Virginia Tech at Assembly Hall, win the WNIT, put the banner up, Dylan gets to cover it, Bendu gets to be on the actual court for all of that. And, there's just no better way to do it. And now the team this year, I meant to ask them this, but did you hear about the Ali Patberg thing at Buffalo's? Do you hear about this?
I did not, no.
They're talking about naming something the Pat Burger because they're
that would be good.
How good they were this year. Yeah, and the accolades that the team has been getting now. So that, it just speaks volumes to what the teams of before have really, brought to the program.
Oh, I would be willing to try it. You've got to keep your eyes peeled now for a potential new burger at Buffalo's named after IU's all-conference point guard. Well, you mentioned special seasons, Brandon. Now we got to look at a season that unfortunately took a turn for the worse and didn't turn out how it hoped. We bring in the man himself, the pride of Louisville, Kentucky. It's Jack Grossman, college sports aficionado. And now we're talking about the game that you talked about at the top, Brandon. IU against North Carolina, 2016 Big Ten ACC Challenge at Assembly Hall. Jack is in his lair with all the IU lore. I think we even see Emmanuel Crimson's M right behind him.
Yes.
Thank you for
There he
checking in,
is.
my friend, all the way down on the Ohio River. How are you?
Oh, thanks for having me on, guys. Really excited about it. You talk about the Pat Burger. What goes on the Ali Pat Burger?
That's
at
what I'm trying to
Buffalo's?
figure out.
I
I don't
mean,
know.
I think she would have to have input on that,
Just what does Ali Patberg like on a burger?
Well, first of all, the first
the way to
Pat
do it.
Burger needs to be served to Pat Burger herself. She needs to be there to take the
Oh
first
yes,
bite.
but you
Absolutely.
can't give it to her for free until she graduates because then that would be against
Violation.
NCAA rules.
Yes, the NCAA. Oh my gosh! All right,
You
she's got
got
another
it.
year.
Oh,
but she'll
Jack,
get
it's
there.
good to see you, man. So IU's taking on North Carolina. You're a freshman at this point. This is a North Carolina team that had beaten them in the Sweet 16 a few months before and then lost on the Chris Jenkins buzzer beater in the national final to Villanova. This Tar Heels team would eventually go on to win the title and their kind of revenge tour. It's a good ball club, but IU took it to them that night in a crazy game.
Yeah, they really did. You bring that North Carolina team. They lost on the Chickens. That was arguably the greatest college basketball game of all time in that game. And they bring almost everyone back, basically everyone except Marcus Page. So this team is incredible. They're one of the best teams that we've had in college basketball the past 3-4 years. They end up going and win the title, but they had nothing in this game for Indiana, which is kind of weird. I mean, IU at that stage, yes, they faded, missed the NCAA tournament, went to the NIT as a 4th seed that year. But at that point, they're 13th in the country. They had already beaten Kansas and Hawaii. Yes, they lost to IPFW and created the great moment of the guy with the bleach bottle rushing the court and chugging on bleach or whatever was in the bleach bottle. But Indiana at that stage, OG Anunoby didn't play in that game, was considered to be not just a tournament team, but a top 15 team, a team that had second weekend potential, possibly even Final Four potential. This was a team that had OG Anunoby, Thomas Bryant, James Blackman Jr., Robert Johnson, 4 really, really good college players. And when it was all clicking like it was on that night, it was a blowout early on. Indiana led this game 26-9 on the team that went on to win the national championship. And North Carolina in their previous 4 games, it was the Maui Invitational plus a date with Hawaii, trailed for a total of 16 seconds in those 4 games. So Maui Invitational, you're playing some pretty good teams in there. In the game against Indiana, the first 17 seconds of the game were tied, and then Indiana led the rest of the way. So Indiana controlled this game from the tip. It was an absolutely insane atmosphere. That's the thing I remember the most about it, was just how nuts Assembly Hall was during that game. A lot of people our age, since we're all seniors, when you talk about, what's the greatest, atmosphere or game as students at Assembly Hall, a lot of people go to the Duke game the next year that Indiana lost at home, and that was great also. But for me, I feel like this game gets overlooked a little bit just because of how much that team faded down the stretch of that season and kind of the disappointment overall in that season. But Brandon, you brought up the top of the show, Jim Cornelison singing the national anthem was absolutely bonkers. Everyone going nuts. Kyle Schwarber was there. And then obviously you can't forget the 1981 national title team reunion during that game. Isaiah Thomas, Randy Whitman, the whole crew there. I think one of my favorite moments of that game is Isaiah Thomas at the end of the game after Indiana wins. I used to have the big heads for the students, which very unfortunately have gone away the last couple of years. Isaiah Thomas is running around the court in Assembly Hall carrying a big head of the crying Jordan meme. And it is one of the most hilarious and funny and just best things, especially knowing everything that Thomas and Jordan went through during their basketball playing careers, that I think I've ever, just being a small part of it, just being a freshman sitting in the balcony in that game.
Jack, there's so much to unpack there. Obviously, Isaiah Thomas, holding up Jordan. Jordan played for UNC. He's got all the faith in the world that his Tar Heels are going to do it all the time. They came to Assembly Hall after just taking on the Hoosiers in the Sweet 16 the year before in the tournament, after IU had secured the Big Ten regular season title. Did it feel any different, you think, from the Indiana's perspective? Were they trying to get revenge in this game, or do you think this was just like any other game? They just wanted to win it at Assembly Hall and it was just rocking?
I was charged up. I think the fact that they played in the Sweet 16 may have had a little bit to do with it, just because, North Carolina shot the lights out in that Sweet 16 game. Marcus Page, who was a sub 30% three-point shooter that season, comes out and hits 5 threes in the first 5 minutes. So it's like, come on, guys. Indiana actually scores 86 points in that game. They get whatever they want offensively, but as what happened at multiple points during the Tom Crean era, and one of the biggest reasons why, Tom Crean isn't the coach here anymore, they just couldn't defend anything in that game. Carolina breaks 100 in that basketball game. So coming back, they're in Assembly Hall. Indiana has a good amount of players back from that team. Yes, they did lose Yogi Ferrell, which that loss hurt them more and more as the season wore on, especially after, OG Anunoby gets hurt. But James Blackman Jr., who was a star for IU, didn't play in that game. OG Anunoby was just a role player that was coming on late in the season, but was still playing restricted minutes behind Troy Williams, who was also a junior on that team before leaving pro. But I think it was more of, you get this sense kind of every year with IU. You get that first really big game of the basketball season, that big home date at Assembly Hall.
Marquette,
all
the State.
Marquette the next year's a huge one. The Duke one, my sophomore year in 2017, obviously is what a lot of people talk about, to where just everyone's kind of just been sitting around and waiting. Yes, the football season's been going on, but unless it's a case like this year where they're having an unprecedented, incredible year, as much as it pains me to say it, that most of the general people don't care about the football team. And that's an institutional problem with the IU fan base in itself. And that hurts me as someone who's followed both IU football and IU basketball for a long time to say, but that's just kind of the truth of the matter. When IU football is 4-6 in the middle of November, you're waiting for basketball season to really crank up. And that first home day, the Big Ten ACC Challenge, a lot of years, is just kind of the outpouring emotion of just all the charged up feelings of wanting basketball back from a basketball crazy fan base just being let out. And you throw in the fact that Carolina was a top 3 team in the country at that stage. They're the name brand of North Carolina. You have all the celebrities in there. It is a Sweet 16 revenge game. It led to being one of the best atmospheres I think we've ever seen in Assembly Hall, to where I don't think it gets put up there enough with, obviously it wasn't as good as the Watchai game, or I know people love to talk about the Marco Killingsworth game from 05, then obviously the Duke game just a couple years ago, but that was a really special crowd that I don't think we've seen matched since that point for various reasons, mostly being the basketball team just hasn't been relevant enough to generate that much excitement really at any stage since then. Sam, you brought up that Marquette game. The Marquette crowd was good, but
yeah,
the North Carolina crowd blew that one out of the waters.
Yeah, so if the North Carolina crowd was elite, then what we've seen is at least a tier below that, then, is what you're saying.
Yes, I would call the Marquette crowd like a B.
Okay.
B, which we haven't had that many great crowds lately, just the past couple of years, just because the team hasn't been good. I mean, even this year when it looked like they were going to finally get into the NCAA tournament before the pandemic strikes, that it wasn't really a team that seemed to get a lot of the fan base, especially a lot of the students, the younger fan base, who really Indiana basketball has to figure out a way to try to get students and younger fans to kind of buy back in on the basketball program, because it's a totally different culture now for IU students that are fans of IU basketball. When I was a freshman, and Brandon can attest to this, it was a big deal to go to IU basketball games. It was It was huge. I mean, that was the show in town. Yeah. Now you look at it, I mean, Sam, you can attest to this just being here the past couple of years. I mean, it used to be kind of like IU basketball is what Alabama football games, I'm sure, were like for you when you were down there in Tuscaloosa. Now it's just kind of like no one seems to care that much if they go to a game or not, because, a lot of times, yes, they've had some big wins the last couple of years, but, you're going for a 9 p.m. tip to see 15-14 Indiana play against Northwestern, who's 6-18. And that's just, we're in a stage now with people, you can't just automatically sell them on going to a game like that. And it's kind of sad, but you kind of understand it from that standpoint also.
And Jack,
brilliant State of the Union, Jack. And Jack is in tune with IU basketball just about as good as anybody, student, media member, whoever it may be. Before we let you go, my man, give us one word, one little sampling of a prediction for this Indiana basketball program coming up in 2020, 2021. Obviously, this team's bid for an NCAA tournament was cut short due to the coronavirus outbreak. But after you've seen it up close with a front row seat for the last 4 years, what do you think Archie Miller's Hoosiers are going to do in his 4th year coming up next November?
A lot of it has to do if they can get Christian Lander to be able to reclassify. I know he said that he wants to, but obviously with all the coronavirus pandemic stuff, it's a little bit harder to try to figure that out at this stage. If they are able to get him to come back and Trayce Jackson-Davis comes back, this is going to be Archie's best chance of having a really good team since the Romeo Juwan year. I know it's only been 3 years, but when you only have 4 years, you don't have too much data to go up against. But this will be his most talented team since that group. He won't have as quite as much firepower as Romeo and Juwan, but Trayce Jackson-Davis can be a legit star in the Big Ten, a guy that could be first team All Big Ten, potentially Big Ten player of the year if everything goes right for him. You have another guy in Lander that's really good in that. And critical to see how guys like Rob Finney continue to develop, Aljamain Durham, Justin Smith, Joey Brunk. You need all those guys to develop and take their game to another level, and you got to start hitting some shots from the outside. That's really what it all comes down to. They could get at the baseline, should be a tournament team next year. If they could get like a 5, 6, 7 seed, win a game in the NCAA tournament, looking back to when Archie was hired, if that's what you're hoping for 4 years in being your best result from Archie Miller, that's probably not what you would be hoping for. But at this stage, being in the present, be a solid tournament team, top 30 team in the country, crack your head in the AP poll a couple times, win a tournament game, maybe have a shot at a Sweet 16, and it could be a really successful year.
Well said, my man. Jack Grossman joining us from Louisville. Thanks for coming on.
Anytime, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
All right,
Jack.
you got it. It's always good when Jack joins the party. And a great State of the Union, I must say, Brandon, on IU basketball. Well said, thorough, passionate too,
Yeah.
for sure.
He hit it over the head. And it makes sense because it is a passionate fan base. It always has been. And it's kind of fluctuated over the years. And, he compared it to the way it was when we were freshmen, and you can attest to how football is a religion in Alabama and at the University of Alabama. And my goodness, basketball, Indiana basketball is a religion here. And I remember it was actually a really quick, funny story. Freshman year, I was at an IU football game, and I'm standing in line with my roommate for Dippin' Dots, and OG Anunoby is right behind me, and I had no idea who he was. Like at the time, like I didn't recognize him, and my roommate was like, "Hey, like, are we supposed to know this guy behind you? Because like everybody keeps coming up and like asking for like pictures with him and like autographs and like all this stuff." And I was like, oh my gosh. I turned around and I 100% thought I was looking at like an NBA player or something. Like the amount of attention that one guy was getting, crowds coming up, thanking him for what he did in the NCAA tournament. That's when I realized who he was. And then I was like, oh my gosh. And I had to ask for a picture with him, Sam. It was a special moment. Posted it on the IG, on the Instagram, and then the rest is history. But that's really how it's been. It was like that when Romeo came, and that's the way the team has been, and we'll see what happens with the future recruits too.
Yeah, and Anunoby, he is an NBA player now, so you got that right. You were right from the beginning.
Up to Toronto.
You got it. All right, let's go to the pitch. We're going to talk a little IU men's soccer, and Detroit's very own Maya Engel hops on the line. She is with us here on the Zoom room. Maya, how are you? Good to see you.
Hey guys, I'm doing good. How are you?
Hey, Maya.
Doing well. It looks like you've got a nice sun
I
coming
know
down.
the sun keeps moving. So like at first it was in front of me, now it's kind of behind me. So we're just gonna go with it.
All about that
Love it.
natural light.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Maya has been on the IU men's soccer beat for the last couple of seasons, and she's been able to see a couple of Todd Yeagley's really good squads, including in 2018 when they made it back to the College Cup for the second straight year. Maya, dive into your memories with that great team as they were trying to go for their 9th star.
Where do I even start, guys? That team was so incredibly good. And that was actually my first team that I covered as a beat reporter at IU. So it was really an exciting way for me to start my beat reporting career with a team who went 23-1. They were 8-0 in Big Ten conference play, the first team to do that since the Big Ten conference expanded. And they were 12-0 at home. So I didn't cover a losing IU game until that College Cup game. So even when I would, right? Even when I would travel, I would go to South Bend or Grand Park. They won those games. So by the time I got to Santa Barbara and had to cover that College Cup game, I was like, how do you even cover a loss? I didn't know what to do or what to say. So yeah, I definitely was spoiled. And oh my gosh, I guess I'll just start by talking about the roster. That roster, I think it's one of the best teams in IU program history.
I agree.
Andrew Gutman, who ended up winning the Herman Trophy. He was the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, scored 11 goals as a left back. That's not something that you hear all the time. And then you have Trevor Schwartz, who led the league with 16 assists. And he was just, oh my gosh, the two of them together were such a duo. It was just every single play, it seemed like, oh, Trevor Schwartz, pass it to Andrew Gutman, and Gutman heads it in. It was just so incredibly exciting. Then you have guys like Reese Buckmaster and Timmy Mell and, Griffin Dorsey, Justin Rennicks. I could go on, and you're looking at all these guys who are now playing for the MLS. So I was really lucky to cover this team my junior year. And, although they didn't get the results they were hoping for in the College Cup, it wasn't that big of a surprise. Like, I think with the talent, they could have won it all, but they were going up against a Maryland team who they've already played twice. And the first time, they barely got the win. It was 18 seconds left, and Andrew Gutman scored the game winner. The second time, they won in PKs. So every game was super close. So it's so hard to beat a team 3 times in a row. So I don't think that loss against Maryland defines that 2018 men's soccer team. I think, like I said before, they're definitely one of the best teams in program history.
Yeah.
They had the double in the Big Ten. I mean, a lot of winning for that group. And you mentioned all those pro players, Maya. I mean, they were a veteran-heavy group. They had so many seniors. But then you also sprinkle in the youth of like a Griffin Dorsey or a Jack Mayer, who's a freshman at the time.
Right. Yeah. And he ended up
Just
winning
a
Big Ten
stacked
Freshman of the
team.
Year. It was so stacked. Definitely.
Yeah. When you went out to Santa Barbara, how was that experience? I mean, it's awesome going out to Cali for an event like that.
It was really awesome. I honestly didn't expect to be able to go and cover the team in Santa Barbara. So just to get that opportunity was so fun. It was in December. So obviously leaving a cold and snowy Bloomington to go to sunny Santa Barbara was amazing. Exactly what I needed at that time. And it was like a few days before finals. So I remember thinking like, I probably should stay home and study for finals, but like, I'm not going to miss out on this opportunity. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. So it was so fun. We got a pretty decent sized group of IU sports media students, and Galen was, kind of the leader of it all. He got this big van and just was driving us all around in a big van through the streets of LA and stuff. So it was really fun, and getting to go to the game the first day, it was just crazy. Like I was so used to watching the games at Bill Armstrong Stadium, which is a nice stadium, but then to go to Santa Barbara and watch the best 4 teams in the country play with mountains behind you, and it's still 80 degrees at 7 p.m. That was quite the experience. So it was just really awesome to be there, and obviously didn't get the results that IU was hoping for, but it kind of worked out for us media students anyways, because then the next day, since IU lost, they didn't play, we kind of just got to bum around Santa Barbara and go to the beach and really enjoy our time. So it was definitely one of my favorite experiences in my college career.
Yeah, you earned it, especially getting through Grand Park for the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, right.
Unbelievable.
Well, Santa Barbara is certainly not a bad place to be spending your time and having to cover the team that you have the beat for.
Right.
But, you can make the argument that this is one of the most talented IU teams that did not win the NCAA championship.
Mhm.
And, in that regard, they made it to the College Cup. It was, just so special. The 3rd time in 6 seasons that they had done that, and they go against a really talented Maryland team that wound up actually winning the national championship that year. Donovan Pines scoring that goal that, really put them up and above there. But, what was it about that Indiana team that just made them so special? That top 5 ranking in the tournament, they just led the way from start to finish.
I mean, you guys kind of mentioned it, just the roster and all of the guys, a lot of them were seniors or juniors, so they had a lot of experience with this team. So they built up chemistry. Like Andrew Gutman was on the team for 4 years. By the time he was a senior, he knew his teammates and they knew each other so well that they just clicked every single game. Like every single time you go out to Bill Armstrong Stadium, you were going to watch them do something great. So I just think if one of those players who I mentioned earlier wasn't on the team, it could have been a completely different story. Like I don't think I mentioned Frankie Moore, but he was really kind of the engine almost to everyone. He's not someone who you would see scoring a lot or maybe even assisting a lot, but he was the guy who got things going. He was the start of the play. So even if he didn't assist, he was the guy who passed the ball to the person who assists. You know what I'm saying? So they just had so many talented guys that if you put them all together, you're bound to have greatness happen.
Yeah, and we've kind of seen the culture transform in IU soccer too. It's become something that is just so much more than I think anybody ever expected it to be. Does that come from, Todd Yeagley? Does that come from the players, the recruiting? What is it that has made soccer so special at Indiana now?
I definitely think it's Todd Yeagley. I mean, he's been the coach for 9 seasons now, and you've seen everything they've accomplished over the past few years. He's really changed the just entire atmosphere of going to a game at Bill Armstrong Stadium with his recruiting, with his coaching styles. He is so smart. I mean, he was Big Ten Coach of the Year for a reason. So I think it all starts with Coach Yeagley, but then it's a ripple effect. I mean, it goes down to his recruits and also his assistant coaches. And so it's just everything has to be almost like perfect for the Hoosiers to have as much success as they did. And it was anywhere from coaching to all the fans, to the players, to the team chemistry. They were just on point.
Well done, Maya. That's Maya Engel checking in from Detroit on a report with IU men's soccer. Appreciate you taking the time. Enjoy the sunny day up there in Michigan.
Thank you. I will.
Awesome. All right. Maya Engel checks in.
Thanks, Maya.
Zoom Room episode 1 continues. Now we're going to go back to the gridiron with the pride of Bettendorf, Iowa. He is from the Quad Cities. He shouts it loud and proud. And I believe, I don't want to oversell and underdeliver here, but I believe he's got a special background as well. Here is Michael Tilka, who is hopping on to talk about IU football this past year at Maryland. Michael, what's going on, man?
What's going on? It's great to be back here on the Zoom Room, or I guess not necessarily be back, but be a part of IU sports media history with this. And yeah, I was able to, I've been messing with the virtual background.
Look at that.
Here on Zoom. And so I found a highlight package from the IU Maryland game. If it takes up too much bandwidth or if things start to go haywire, let me know. But for now, I will be more than glad to keep it up if it's all right with you guys.
You got it, man.
It works. We can hear you.
I forgot that Mike Penix started this game at quarterback. Take us through your experience with this game, but this is where Peyton Ramsey also started to take over for this IU ball club.
Yeah, to piggyback off of Austin's thing, and before I actually get started, I wanted to make one quick comment. If Austin thinks the Nebraska tailgate is good, Indiana opens their season in Kinnick 2021, and Kinnick and Iowa City Experience will blow Lincoln out of the water. Easy.
Ooh.
Tailgate City. Love that.
Okay.
But with Austin said, you know, when people look back on the season, a lot of people are going to remember either the Nebraska game or the bowl game itself, which is totally understandable with what they bring so sort of from a narrative standpoint and what they brought in terms of excitement. Because looking at this game, this really wasn't that. I think Maya's still on the call here, because those games are more exciting, they're more interesting, they have more things going on. But I think Maryland is where we found out that, you know, this team is going to be different. And because they head into this game 4-2, and everything has kind of gone along the track you would have expected for IU. They had a very close game against Michigan State. They get blown out by Ohio State, but I think we learned by this point, you know, Ohio State's just going to destroy everybody, and we're living in their world. But going into this Maryland game, you know, at least in the 4 years I've been at IU, that it set, you know, the standard of how the season's going to go. They beat them in 2016. They make a bowl game. They lose to them in College Park 2017. They're one game short of a bowl. They have late game heroics in 2018 with a Logan Justice kick to give them an opportunity to make a bowl against Purdue the following week. And so for this, you know, they're in a good spot already. They only need 2 more wins for a bowl. But this would have gone such a long way. It alleviates, you know, if they don't win this, they might not win in Nebraska the following week. And then for me specifically, you know, I had a very unique perspective because Thursday night, we taped Hoosier Sports Night. We were finishing cutting up the show. And then around 10 o'clock at night, I hop on a bus and do a nighttime Greyhound trip from Bloomington to College Park and have the worst sleeping experience, I think, in my entire life. But we passing through the West Virginia, those mountains at like 8 o'clock in the morning as the sun was rising, absolutely beautiful. And so we get to the game, and like you said, I think one of the big things was, you know, Michael Penix started this game, and a lot of people forget about that. And there was so much, I think dread would be the perfect word at the time. You know, Peyton Ramsey steps in. Is he going to be able to clutch out this game? And to his credit, he showed us that this offense has changed and that he as a player has changed and just become so much better. And then seeing the 2 late turnovers that the defense was able to come away with, one of them actually right there, the fumble recovery. And then I think the next play is going to be the Reese Taylor interception. Yeah. But seeing those 2 and then walking away with a win, you started to realize this team can be different. This team is 5-2. They only need 1 more win. They have really favorable games that, you know, the 2 that stick out are Northwestern and Purdue left on the schedule, but then they go into Nebraska and win that, and they're bowling in October. It was remarkable.
Oh, yeah, an awesome run. It all started there, Michael. So you made it from the Greyhound.
Yeah.
And you got there. How sweet was it to see Reese Taylor get that interception? And then we start to realize this Hoosier team, like you said, they've got a chance here to not only get bowl eligible, but make this a big season. They've arrived here in terms of being a significant player in the Big Ten.
Yeah, so we traveled Thursday night. Friday morning we get there. We set up their locker rooms, which that's actually a really fun and interesting experience. And then I think we got to our hotel at sometime in the early afternoon. I think I slept for legitimately 6 hours because I got no rest on that awkward chair. And then the next day rolled around, and you know, during that game, there's so much back and forth. There were so many things. I think the play that just happened there was the the Nick Westbrook touchdown right before halftime. And so often we have been critical of Peyton Ramsey not being able to make those really important, really crucial throws. He had been able to do things with his legs, but getting throws like that to what he had to Westbrook was super important. And then Stevie Scott had a really nice drive where it seemed, I think it was a 13-play drive, and 12 of the plays were just Stevie Scott up the middle, or tremendous offensive line work. But then seeing, the strip fumble recovery, but that only resulted in a field goal. So there was still an opportunity, even with a hobbled Maryland team, and they were driving down the field, and then just a horrible, horrible overthrow by Maryland. I can't even remember the poor quarterback's name. And then
Reese Taylor coming up.
Yeah. Then seeing Reese Taylor come up with that was the weight, I think, lifted off of IU fans' shoulders, and the sigh of relief of, okay, this game's not going to get blown. So yeah, that was an incredible experience.
Michael, this was a team back in September that looked like it could become a potential disaster after that Michigan State loss. It looked like they were in the driver's seat, then all of a sudden they're not. They lose that one. They wind up losing by even more than the score really didn't dictate how that game actually went. Then they come back home, they blow out Rutgers, which to a certain extent is expected. And then after that, they go on the road here. At this point in the season, did you think that this was maybe the turning point where you said, hey, okay, I think we can actually make something out of this? And then you see, because Tom Allen, the past 2 seasons, 5-7, he's knocking on the door of bowl eligibility. What was it about this game that really felt like they're trying to prove themselves?
Yeah, and I think the big thing you have to remember up to this point in Tom Allen's career, correct me if I'm wrong, someone in the chat, I believe he only had 2 true road wins at Rutgers 2018, and then at Illinois, before Illinois was actually quote unquote good.
Correct.
Jury's still out on that. So at this point, we haven't seen proven success from Tom Allen and his team of being able to win on the road.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was a big question. And I remember after the Michigan State game, he had a really interesting statement, and I'm not sure, I think it might've been Jack who tweeted this out, but Tom Allen said after the game, we're not going anywhere. And in the tone he said it, you could tell that something was working. He was noticing something, even though it had been an IU football loss that we have seen countless times before. You're up against a really good top 25 team. Things don't go the way you want to late. You play a great 55 minutes, but not a whole 60 minutes. And I think the bowl game encapsulated that perfectly, but that's neither here nor there. So knowing that it was coming, we all knew it was coming. And this was the perfect game that encapsulated, this team's different. They're able to come up with big plays at the end. They're able to win on the road, and they're setting themselves up in a position to where they don't have to get to the bucket game and make the bucket game such a must-win game to even make a bowl. So I think this is where we knew this. I think when we look back, a lot of people are going to remember Nebraska, but this is I think the big turning point for me.
Yeah, had to walk before we could run. That's for sure. Michael, before we let you go, we did this with Jack, and I want to get your State of the Union too on Indiana University football.
Sure.
It's similar because it's a new coach who's starting to pick up positive momentum at the end of your college tenure here in Bloomington. You look at the recruiting. IU just picked up Javon Swan, former Center Grove D lineman, who's going to transfer as a graduate from Stanford. Last night, Cooper Jones, a Valpo 4-star on the D line, a 2021 kid just committed to IU. So get some LEO tweets out there from Coach Tom Allen. There are positive signs for this Indiana University football program after winning 8 games, albeit leaving a 9th on the table down in Jacksonville. So, Michael, what is your idea of where this team goes in 2021 and beyond?
Yeah, I think the expectations for this year are to either meet, but most importantly, they would like to succeed what they were able to accomplish last year. And I think this year is going to be so important, so crucial as a testing ground, because a lot of people, outside of Indiana and sort of Big Ten fans in general, they really haven't paid too much attention to what's been going on in Bloomington. So they're curious to see, was last season kind of a perfect storm? Obviously, Kalen DeBoer was a mastermind of an offensive coordinator. He's gone to Fresno State now, and a lot of assistant coaches have done a lot of shuffling. Even with the strength department, Coach Ballou and Dr. Ray are going to Alabama, of all places. So it's a good sign for your program when you're seeing your assistants climbing up sort of the assistant ladder to either higher profile assistant jobs are going from assistant to coordinator or coordinator to head coach, like what we saw with DeBoer. So I'm expecting this to be a really important, really crucial year. And it's a healthy sign to when you're having these guys go up, but then you can look at potential recruits of guys you want to, in terms of coaching staff, potential coaching staff, looking at them and saying, we took this assistant and we got him here. We took this coordinator and got him here. Do you want to be that next person? Then come to Indiana, enjoy this and join us. So there's a lot of moving pieces, but I think the constants that you have on offense, obviously Penix is a really, really talented quarterback who's able to stand in the pocket and get the ball really anywhere on the field you want him. Stevie Scott and Samson James are going to be quite the power duo. I was really happy to see. And I think IU fans that James came out of the transfer portal. So you have a really stable back. You still have Mike Hart, which is incredibly important. And then obviously Freifogel, Philly, those guys. You have some really interesting and talented pieces. Jawan Burgess, Reese Taylor, like we said earlier, Taiwan Mullen, who's set to make a really, really big jump from his freshman to sophomore year. And so I think there's so much good going on, but I think everybody wants to see can they maintain this consistency? Can this team rise above, the high expectations that were set last year? And I think they can. I really do.
Yeah, and it's scheduled to start in Madison for the season opener, which is going to be big time. And hey, my friend, we'll keep you held to it with Kinnick in 2021. We need to
2021 in Kinnick. Absolutely. I will, wherever I am in the country, I will do my damnedest to try and make it to Iowa City, because in my 4 years at IU, I only got to see IU play Iowa once, and that was in Bloomington.
Yeah.
And IU got their butt handed to them. So I want to see them go into Kinnick and beat the crap out of Iowa. So that'd be fun for me.
Yeah, that was the tight end U Hawkeye team with Noah Fan, TJ Hawkinson. They ran wild.
Guys were so good.
Yeah.
And then I think it was Beathard at quarterback. No,
Stanley. Nate Stanley.
Nate Stanley. And I was just like, we're really getting roasted by Nate Stanley right now. I had my whole family in town. It was a mess.
Oh man, Michael Tilka, thank you for joining us. Thank you for the highlights, my man.
Thank you guys. It's been a wonderful 4 years. I'm glad I was able to share one of my favorite memories with y'all here on the inaugural Zoom room. Hopefully we'll have more of this next month.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks,
happy to have you in our senior class here.
All righty, so we continue. There's a final guest, Brandon, here in Zoom Room, episode 1. But this has been a great time, my man. You've been having a good time?
Oh, I've been having a blast. This hour has just flown by, Sam. But I'm telling you, like I said at the top of the show, this feels right. It feels like this is where we're supposed to be. We're doing our jobs. And, we're doing it in the best way possible, even if we're all in isolation right now.
You got that right, my friend. Our final guest of this afternoon's show is another Louisville native. He's another Manual Crimson. He's checking in from the banks of the Ohio. BTN Student U producer, Indiana University student television host and reporter, Mr. Jordan Gould. Comfy there on his bed. Jordan, how are you, man?
Of course. Hey, it's Sam.
There he is.
No one better with the introductions, that you give for people. The titles, that's a heck of a title there.
Makes you feel like the most special person in the world.
Only for the best, my friend. You got it.
And I must say, I'm impressed that you recognize the red M crest above Jack's room there. I have to say, for someone not from the city, I was very surprised that you.
Well, you've only shown it to me a few times, man. So
yeah, props to you.
Got to store it. You got it. Jordan, you've had the opportunity to cover this Indiana men's soccer team as well. We talked a little bit about it with Maya earlier in the program. This team for 2019, different team. They had been to 2 college cups in a row, but they lose everybody. That's a big narrative coming in. Then they open up on Classic weekend with Pitt, and that was a terrific match. What do you remember from that one against the Panthers that went into extra time?
Yeah, that was such an interesting match, especially right at the beginning of the season, where if you remember, they came into that game ranked number 2 in the nation. And something that really stuck with me earlier leading up to that match that week was Todd Yeagley said, we haven't done anything to really earn that number 2 spot. That was just on the name, brand recognition of IU soccer, right? You talk about all the college cups, the great players like Gutman, who won the Mac Hermann Trophy the year before. That was all based on, credibility, the things that they did in the past. So when that match came and Pittsburgh came out firing, going up 2-0 just in the first half by Edward Kiza, who was the ACC Player of the Year before, I think Indiana, it shocked a lot of people. Maybe it woke up maybe a beast inside of all of them, particularly when, and this is a very young team, keep in mind, where they lost 10 of their 11 starters from the previous season, the only returner being Jack Mayer, who, only went on to become the number 2 overall pick in the MLS draft this year by Nashville SC. But yeah, I mean, that was such an interesting match just because of, they went down 2-0 early. And keep in mind, both of those pick goals came in a matter of, I think, 7 seconds. Like, it was just like, it was a rocket, like boom, boom. And I think that caught maybe Sean Caulfield a little, who got the start, and that one off guard. I mean, you keep in mind, you have Trey Muse at the back of the goal for so many years. We're so used to and spoiled, used that word earlier, of just kind of, I don't know, the ability to lock down, right? The just gauntlet on the defensive end of the field, the unit that IU puts out there. So to go down 2-0 early, that was kind of a stinger. But then the ability to bounce back, respond, and score 2 goals of their own in the second half, that was impressive. The first coming by one of the stud freshmen, Josh Penn, and then to cap it off in extra time with Herbert Endele, which was a fantastic goal, and the really underrated pass by AJ Palazzolo in the midfield to kind of allow Herb to go and just, I mean, he's a speedster. He's probably the fastest guy in this team. Just to break open and score the final goal, that was a golden goal, and that was exciting. And you keep in mind, I think the first 5 matches this season all went to extra time. So, and I remember the Big Ten opener, I think it was against Wisconsin, was it? And I was just like, I mean, this game was tied. I mean, I think Indiana was in control of that one, and then Wisconsin comes back, and I'm like, here we go again. Like, we're going to have another extra time game. So, yeah, pretty remarkable stuff early on for IU last season.
Yeah, and of course, they went on later after a rain out to play Labor Day morning against UCLA that same weekend, and then won another one in extra time. That was Jack Mayer off a corner. Jordan, we have got a question here. Thank you for joining us on our live stream. We're getting a little crowd interaction. Thomas Horky checking in from Germany. He wants to know, could we see games without spectators at IU in the future? In Europe, they call that ghost games. We've seen that with some of the premier European soccer leagues that started even before the coronavirus pandemic arrived on the United States soil, at least very tangibly and in front of us. Serie A had ghost games for a while. What's your take on that in terms of, could we come back in the fall and see a ghost game for an IU soccer at a newly renovated Bill Armstrong Stadium come in August or something?
Yeah, this is definitely something that I think is on a lot of people's minds right now, as more and more events across the sporting world just continue to get canceled. I mean, we just had the Wimbledon recently canceled, the Open Championship. So things are getting canceled left and right. And while the fall seems a ways away, I mean, I don't know, Sam. I mean, you think about it here. Do you really think it's possible we can send athletes out there and have them travel if there's really not a vaccine or any cure to this disease? It's going to be hard to fathom. I mean, you think about football. I mean, think about Lincoln, Nebraska, where they just have packed 90,000+ people in there. I mean, people are very close. I mean, there's similar things in basketball, but we're talking football in the fall and even soccer and other fall sporting events. I don't know. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. I think it's going to be very difficult to reasonably put athletes out there when you have to put their safety and health first, knowing that there could be another wave of this. I mean, that's what the health specialists and doctors are saying. So, I don't know what's going to happen, but I think it's very possible that we could see those fall sports maybe pushed back to potentially next spring, as crazy as that idea sounds. But I think you got to think and heavily consider that idea.
Definitely uncertain times. And now we're going to make a call to the bullpen, go quad box again. Michael Tilka, we're pulling a softball here. You could pitch, come out of the game, and come back into the game. Michael, you've got a take on this issue too.
Yeah, so an actually really important thing when it comes to, sporting events and seeing the effects it's had, and specifically Italy and Spain, with those two nations, at least in Europe, being the most heavily hit by the coronavirus. And a really interesting note, the way seeing how all these things played out, is that one of the things that sort of launched these two nations as the most was because of a match between Atalanta and Valencia, a Spanish and Italian club soccer teams. And because, all these fans are traveling to one stadium, they're all on top of each other, like Jordan was saying, it kind of set off its time bombs where all these people are getting together and then they disperse to do different countries, all to their different homes and parts of the world and things like that. So having this play out the way we did, I think we avoided, with how horrible and how ignorant Rudy Gobert looked with, touching all those microphones and then being, sort of the first high profile celebrity to be announced as positive for the coronavirus along with Tom Hanks. But, right before when this was all happening, the NBA was still in full swing. So you still had fans at such large capacities. And so getting the NBA canceled and avoiding the NCAA tournament with so many fans traveling across the country, people gathering for large groups to watch these games, even in their hometowns. I think with what we've seen at these ghost games and what we've seen from around the world, I think we avoided a lot more issues and things like that because we were able to learn from the example that happened in Europe. So it was really interesting to see as this past, it feels like a year, but this past month has gone on that we've been able to take some things away and be able to do constructive things and get ahead of things. And I think starting with the NBA and being able to be the first to put their foot down. And, it seems, I remember at the time, because a lot of us were at the Big Ten tournament getting that news of, oh, the NBA is just postponed now. This is unprecedented. And it's to see sort of everybody follow suit, the next day, or the next 2 days, NCAA canceling all their spring sports. I think that was a really important step into stopping the spread of this virus so that we can avoid, later on down the line, having to play ghost games for, an Armstrong Stadium or Memorial Stadium or hopefully Assembly Hall if it does tend to go that long. So an important and interesting note is the chronology of this evolves over time.
Well said, Michael. Thank you. We'll wrap up here with Jordan. Jordan, IU men's soccer, and we hope we get it. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of changing variables with the moving target, with the current pandemic that our world is engulfed in right now. If you had to put sort of a favorite from last year with the 2019 men's soccer team, obviously plenty of dramatic games overall, but you were on the beat the entire season, whether that was producing matches on BTN Student U, going out there and shooting yourself. What kind of stood out for you from this team that ended up winning the Big Ten double, and where do they go from here, knowing that it isn't the same sort of wave of youth talent? They don't know how much of that, will be retained.
Yeah, I think you look at last year's team, it made them maybe different than previous teams. I mean, I think the easy thing to point out is that experience. But, I mentioned all those extra time games. I mean, they played a lot. They logged a lot of extra minutes over the course of the season. And that's something Todd Yeagley really enjoyed seeing. And I really think of the resiliency of this team to not, back down when the going gets tough. I mean, they had some, over the course of the season, a lot of tough, hard-fought matches. I mean, you look even in the Big Ten championship against Michigan in that finale. I mean, that one just went down to PKs, which I love seeing. So, I mean, they had a lot of kind of tough matches over the course of the season, but definitely their resiliency, the ability to kind of respond, especially with the young of a team they are. But I mean, guys like Victor Becerra, Josh Penn, I mean, they played like upperclassmen. I think a lot of people can attest to that. I mean, just the way they played, and they're going to have to, again, of course, next season might be up in the air at this point. We're unsure what's going to happen, but they're going to have a similar role if the season does go on as planned, that maybe we saw like a Jack Mayer in only his second year come into and just kind of be the leader of the team on the field. So, it'll be interesting next year. But again, everything's up in the air at this point.
They're going to have a quality. The problem or the question will be is whether they can put it out there on the pitch. That's for sure.
No question about
Jordan Gould, thank you so much, my friend. Stay safe down there in Louisville. We'll talk to you soon.
Of course. And hey, guys, stay healthy. I know everyone's been saying it. Wash the hands, though. It really does mean something.
Yeah, you got it. That's Jordan Gould. Brandon, I can't believe it, but here we are. We have reached the finish line on Zoom Room episode 1.
Yeah, we made it, man. That was awesome. It was great to talk to Jordan. It's just great to see all of us back here in the same place again. Obviously we'd be doing this in the media school, so it's great to see everybody. We worked with Jordan on that IU basketball game that we called earlier this year, so that was really special. And they really did bring up a really good point there with everything going on with the coronavirus and all this. And until the testing is able to be more widespread and they can really get it to all the players, Michael talking about it and Jordan both, until they can know for sure that the players are not going to be, potentially infected, and it could not potentially be detrimental to the coaches and their families and to all the fans and to everybody. That, until that happens, and until, we start to see the vaccine really develop and, we have an idea of what's going on, that will really be the reason why we have to keep remaining, in isolation right now, and why everything has been canceled in the way it has. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But, it's great that we've all had the opportunities that we've had to cover everything this year. We did get the majority of the year. We got, most of those seasons, everything except for the spring sports, so that's still 2/3 of the year of IU athletics events that really all came together here. And, you and I both know we had, our time to broadcast our stuff. And obviously we still wish that we could be covering baseball and softball and all these things that are going on right now. But, it really was special, and hopefully everything will return to normal as soon as possible.
Yeah, a great job by our entire guest panel joining us on the Zoom room today. Austin Render, Dylan Wallace, Bendu Yaney, the one and only Jack Grossman, Maya Engel, Michael Tilka, and of course, Jordan Gould, all taking a trip down memory lane. This broadcast and stream will be archived as well on our IU Sports Media channel. So if you want to check it out and go back and rewind, relive some of the moments from this kind of end of the Fred Glass era of Indiana University athletics circa 2016 to present, go ahead and check it out. It's on our YouTube channel if you want to check it out as well. And we'll also have audio versions of the Zoom room for you to consume. New episodes of the Zoom room coming up next week. We're going to dive in to all things sports and pop culture as we possibly can during the coronavirus pandemic, connecting virtually and giving you a dose of IU athletics along with everything else that fits in terms of NFL draft. We'll be talking a little bit about wings next week, some wing spots in Bloomington. I'm certainly missing my Memphis wings from Buffalo that I get every week, my friend. But this is going to be a fun show, and it was great to share it with you, Brandon. Thanks for everything.
It was. Thank you, Sam. This was perfect.
Yeah, you got it. And thank you to Thomas Horkey, who had the question earlier. Again, IU Sports Media on Twitter, Instagram, all your social media channels to take Zoom room content. For our producer, Galen Clavio, our host, Brandon Schaff, I'm Sam Niederman. Hey, stay safe. Enjoy your weekend. Wash your hands. We will see you guys next week on the Zoom room.